to order, and the first item of business is resolution to appoint our new chief librarian and OCL CEO. So resolve that in accordance with subsection 15.3 of the Public Libraries Act, RSO 1990, the board hereby appoints Lisa Marie Williams, CEO, chief librarian of the Oxford County Library, as secretary of the Oxford Library Board for the remainder of this term of the Oxford County Library Board, with authority to delegate duties of the secretary as deemed appropriate. Can I have a mover and a seconder for that? Moved by David, seconded by Regina. Anybody want to speak to that? David?
Looking at terms of reference, is this a secretary or a recording secretary that we're appointing here?
I think we had looked at our secretary.
The resolution says secretary, so yeah.
Just referring to our terms of reference, it describes it as a recording secretary, and then later on in the terms of reference, it actually calls it the secretary. So
We can make that correction to the terms of reference moving
Okay.
forward.
We'll just go with secretary.
Yeah.
And then the question would be then, should Lisa Marie actually be the secretary, or should there be somebody else being recording secretary so that she can concentrate on being the CEO chief librarian?
This resolution gives her the authority to delegate duties of the secretary as deemed appropriate. So if she's okay with that, I'm okay with that.
Okay. I should read the whole motion.
Well, Lisa Marie.
So to speak to that further, Chair, we'd be delegating the duties out to the deputy clerk for this meeting and going forward. And that would give us the options so that if the deputy clerk was unavailable for a meeting, that we could then either I could take the minutes or we could find another staff member on the team that could take over.
Great. Anybody else on this? All those in favor? Okay, good. Yeah, okay, good. Opposed? That's carried. So at this point, I'm just going to pause before we go into approval of agenda and suggest that I know Lisa Marie has met some people, but I think we should probably just go around the room and the screen and introduce ourselves so she can put a face to a name and who everybody is. So Lisa Marie and I have met a couple times, talked extensively, so we'll skip over me and go to you, Julia.
Hi there, I'm Julia. I'm one of the citizen appointees. I live in Ingersoll, so that's where my home base library is.
So I'm tempted to tell you, Lisa Marie, that I'm Larry Martin or Don McKay. I really don't care. You can pick your choice. I'd like to be able to say that, but I couldn't live up to that standard. So I'm just David Maybury, Mayor of Southwest Oxford on County Council.
Laura, your camera's on, so you're next.
All right, yeah, Laura Langford, and I did have the chance to meet with Lisa Marie, so that was great. Yeah, citizen appointee hailing from Zora Township.
And Regina?
Hi there, Lisa Marie. Sorry, something's gone funny with my camera the last 2 minutes. Anyway, I will get it back. I'm Regina Smith, and we talked back and forth by email, but I'm sure we'll find a time to get in touch with one another and meet. So welcome to the team.
And Don? You there, Don? Yeah. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest or the general nature thereof? David?
I think David might have forgot to hit his mic.
Sorry, I just wondered if Lisa Marie doesn't want to introduce herself for those of us who have not been through the interview process, et cetera.
Good afternoon. I'm Lisa Marie Williams. I'm in my third week here. So it's been lovely being here, and I can report I have seen all 14 branches, which was amazing. I'm previously from the Oakville Public Library, where I was the manager of collections operations there. Have had a long career in libraries in both Ontario and the Eastern United States as well.
Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest or the general nature thereof? Not seeing any. Adoption of board minutes of previous meeting. Resolved that the library board minutes of April 18th, 2022 be adopted. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Julia and Laura.
Yes, please.
Resolved that the agenda be approved. Can I have a mover and a seconder? David, Julia. Any issues with the agenda? All those in favor?
In favor.
Opposed? That's carried. Disclosures of pecuniary interest we did. Adoption of the board minutes previously being resolved that the library board minutes of April 18th, 2022 be adopted. Are there issues with those minutes? And did we, Lindsay, we captured a mover and a seconder. I screwed it up royally, but thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Delegations and presentations, there are none. Consideration of delegations and presentations, none. Consideration of correspondence, none. Reports, 8.1 statistics, recommendation that the statistics for materials circulation and attendance be received as information. And Lisa Marie, is there anything you want to highlight for the board in that report before I ask them for questions?
Sure. What I've noticed looking at back to 2019, which would be our last year of regular statistics prior to COVID, the circulation in particular should be noted. It is up 9.3% from 2019 numbers for April of the same time that year. That's pretty amazing when you also then look at our statistics for attendance. Attendance is down still. We're at about 60% of our attendance in 2019, but our circulation is up. So that's a good sign that people are coming and using the libraries and taking out more than they did in 2019.
Any questions from the board on that, David?
Lisa, I really don't expect an answer because after 3 weeks, you probably don't know everything. Although maybe you do. Just curious, the electronic or digital, whatever, seems to be down considerably, but the circulation numbers are up considerably. And the circulation numbers up make a lot of sense. I'm just wondering, any thoughts on the digital downward trend?
I think a lot of libraries are starting to see that happen. We had that bump in 2020 and 2021 for COVID, where people were forced to use the digital more freely. And now they're starting to go back to more natural habits, using more physical material again. And so you'll see those decreases. Specifically, it looks like around the digital music and audiobooks and ebooks, where the percentages are starting to fall there. That is likely due to the shifts that we're seeing in terms of usage with things opening back up and having more ability to use our physical spaces, come into, borrow our physical items, that those numbers would continue to fall.
Just to follow up, I guess it surprised me because I kind of wondered, like I expected to be a little bit of a drop, but I didn't think there'd be much of a drop. In the first 3 months down 2 or 3%, that's sort of what I was, maybe 5%. You look at the April, and I know it's not a good idea to look at just 1 month's numbers, but down 22%. And I thought maybe that as people switched over to a new system, through a digital system, they would probably stay there. And I'm actually surprised that there's been kind of a, I would call it a significant decline, so.
We can continue to investigate the numbers and see if patterns continue, and I can reach out to other libraries to see if they're seeing the same type of thing happening within their systems. One thing, when we look at the numbers, digital music and audiobooks are the two that are really off the mark. Ebooks are slightly lower, but not aggressively lower. And a lot of that might also be attributed to usage in your vehicle. So digital music and digital audiobooks are something you would use a lot in your vehicle. And what we might start to see is the numbers really not stable at coming back to the way they were even pre-pandemic if people are not traveling in their vehicles as much as they used to, whether they're working from home more often. So those options aren't required at the same way that they used to be. But we'll keep our eye on it and let you know of any trends that we see both within Oxford and through the greater libraries.
I think I'd be curious, quite honestly, I'm curious what's going to happen over the next 3, 4, 6 months as, you know, things kind of, people will start to kind of find their new balance, right? And as one that will never use an ebook or digital anything other than whatever it is, the Canopy or whatever they call it. That's the only thing I remember going to digitalize, but I just was actually really surprised. I thought there'd be a bit of a dip, but that would be it. So anyways, we'll see what happens. So thanks.
Any other questions on the statistics report? Not seeing any. Can I have a mover and a seconder to receive and file that report? Julia? And David? Sorry. Julia and David. That the statistics for material circulation and attendance be received as information. Any comments on that? All in favor?
In favor.
Opposed? That's carried. And 8.2 librarians report. The recommended resolution or motion that the Oxford County Library Board receive the librarians report number 2022-06 for information and discussion. Lisa Marie, is there anything you want to highlight in that for the board?
You'll notice we still have the section on the pandemic response as we're moving back into in-person programming and our hours are starting to come back. We might see that section of the report start to fade away as we don't see any new responses necessary. But we are returning to our physical in-person programming, and that's an exciting prospect for most. We've had wait lists for some of our programming, but we've also noticed that virtual programming still seems to be a demand. So we're looking at ways to balance that as we can. As I stated earlier, I've made it to all 14 branches, thanks to branch librarian Christina McLaren for taking me around and showing me everything. We had a great time and got to speak really at length about the needs of the different branches, which was wonderful, and meet many of the staff there. We've had a number of meetings as well. And for staff activities, I wanted to focus on Ox on the Run. We're hoping to have that summer schedule ready in the next few weeks as we work towards bringing that service back. And we have 2 summer students this year for that continued service, which is exciting. Oxford Reads will be closing the voting as of May 23rd. So anyone who hasn't voted should vote on one of the 4 titles. And we will have the new title to announce at our next meeting as well. The Ingersoll branch has some sidewalk work being done. So it can be a little fun getting into the branch right now, but there'll be lovely sidewalks soon. And then we're also looking at a window replacement project there. So there'll be some other things happening in the branch to replace some windows. And their makerspace is well on its way. So I'm hoping to have some more information for you at the next meeting. But the Ethernet cables were installed in the room and they're looking at flexible furniture and more equipment that needs to be purchased as well. We have library signage that we're looking at, and we can bring more information in the coming weeks for that to you. We've noticed about 7 signs that are in an older style. A lot of wear on them, and the sign company that had originally made those signs is no longer in business to be able to make some adjustments for us. They also had the hours, which are no longer correct on them. So facility staff are removing the hours pieces from those signs for now, and we are working with Strategic Communication and Public Works to discuss replacement of those signs with the new branding and information, hopefully in the 2023 budget. And then finally, we have a staff day planned for May 30th, and we'll be covering system updates, Ox on the Run 2022, summer reading training as well. And I'll be working with the staff to go through a visioning exercise as well, that we can start to look at the vision and values of the Oxford County Library. I noted that, I think it was March 2021, they had come for reapproval, but the board did not pass a reapproval on those. So we wanted to do an exercise with the staff to see what they see before we bring that forward to all of you, and do a similar exercise with you in the coming months. And then we have some upcoming events as well that we wanted to highlight there for you so that you knew what was happening in our libraries of note. I'm welcome to take any questions.
Questions from the board? David?
Well, Lisa, when I first read this, highlights of activities, I read it as April 29th, you visited 7 branches. And I was going to say, boy, that really didn't give you much time. No, there's not a lot to some of those branches, so half an hour would have been in time. But if you're actually meeting the librarian, it wasn't until afterwards that I realized, I think this means the week of that day. Okay, and that's I wondered. It's nice to reach out and sort of see everybody, but I'm thinking that to really understand, you're probably going to need to spend a lot more time. So I assume you're doing that. So, okay.
Yeah, my intention is to go in and spend some more time at the branches as they reopen, get to know what some of the patterns are there at those branches as well, to see what, and have more in-depth conversations with the staff as possible.
Any other questions on librarian's report? Julia?
This is more of a comment about the programming that's coming, and I feel my role here is I represent young families because my kids are little and really not in a big hurry to go with a bunch of other little like germ children. My little one's too young to get her COVID shot. I'm immunocompromised, so we're not in a huge rush to go out. So I like that there's still virtual stuff still happening. I know there's lots of people that want to come back to in person, and I do miss it because oh, it's fun talking to other parents and comparing notes on how your little kid's doing. I don't think it's not going to be the same. And my kids are now in school, so it'll be interesting to see what it actually is like. I don't know if there's going to be that same level of camaraderie that there was like 2 years ago. So it's more of a comment rather than a question.
Anybody else on the chief librarian's report? Not seeing anyone. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Moved
I'll
by
move it.
Julia, seconded by Laura. Any comments on that report? All those in favor?
In favor.
Opposed? That is carried. And 8.3, 2022-07 Library Board Terms of Reference 2023, recommendation that the Oxford County Library Board adopt the terms of reference for the 2023 session of the board as attached to report number 2022-07. Lisa Marie, is there anything you want to highlight for the board on that report?
Thank you. Yes. So I wanted to make note there are significant changes from the last terms of reference, specifically around the style of the terms of reference. We're working within a template here that asks for a little bit more information than our previous terms of reference. So you'll find I've highlighted for you in the comments section of the report all of the updates that have been made so that you can see it's significant. I think I've 10 different points there with subpoints after about changes to the terms of reference that have been made, but I welcome any questions.
Questions from the board on this report? David?
So a couple of things on the terms of reference, and right into the terms of reference, or did you want it on the report? Because nothing on the report, I just wanted.
Oh,
right in.
no, I think
Okay.
either, right? Yeah.
Terms of reference, a couple little things. Under responsibilities, there's an E missing off the first word. The other thing is I'm wondering about the responsibilities. It says the chief responsibility of the board is a fiduciary duty to act honestly and all that. I would argue that the chief responsibility of a board is to help direct and create the vision for the future. And well, it talks about planning and other things through the report. And it may be in the general governance policy manual. I think that's something we never want to forget, that we look to the chief librarian to kind of provide us with ideas and sort of help us formulate the vision for the library in the future. And I just think that's one of the responsibilities of the board, is to actually spend a significant amount of time working on not just how are things going today, but what do we need to address in the future. Note the membership changing from 4, which it is now 4 councillors, to 3. I might encourage us to bring that down to 2, but I'm very happy with small steps. I can. The other thing that was interesting, and I don't know whether this is a policy of the Public Libraries Act or whether this is something that we've brought forward ourselves. This idea, if there's a vacancy after 45 days or within 40 days or more than 45 days, sorry, of an election, do you have to fill it? And that's the Libraries Act. That's not our own. Okay, I'll not bother arguing that one. See if I can find the right page here. At the top of page 18 of our report, so that's page 3 of 7. Mine, I think there's a line or 2 missing, because it just starts into the member seat becomes vacant and the remaining members shall forthwith declare the seat. I think there's a sentence or 2 missing there from the report. And maybe just the way it comes out on the unless it's supposed to be a capital T.
I think I don't know, to me, I read it, it reads okay if you kind of ignore A, B, C, D, E. It's like, I don't know if I'm reading that right. In accordance with the provisions of the Public Libraries Act, blah, 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 a board member may be disqualified if said member, A, B, C, D, E, the member's seat becomes vacant and the remaining shall forthwith declare the seat vacant.
Then it's grammatically incorrect.
Okay.
You can't the semicolon and then go into another sentence.
Uh-huh.
So, sorry, Lynn, go ahead.
I believe that's just a comma and then a space, but somehow when it got converted to an Adobe version, it's probably just a hard turn, making it look like it's a. So it looks to me like when it was converted to an Adobe version, that space after the comma became a hard return. So it started a new line where it shouldn't be. That should be otherwise forfeits his or her seat, comma, the member's seat then becomes vacant, and the remaining members shall forthwith declare the seat vacant, and so on.
Yeah, that is taken directly from the Public Libraries Act.
We don't want to tweak it anyway. I mean, it's the Libraries Act, so it's not exactly the most current legislation, but I would suggest, I would interpret that in 2022 to include an email, a written email, I would suggest.
Is the microphone off?
Sorry, Secretary, it says Secretary and further down, so I just wanted to be clear.
Yeah, we can amend that to remove recording from the heading.
Okay. And under the responsibilities of the CEO, I'm wondering if planning means strategic planning or kind of day-to-day planning. I think it's under 3. It says supports and facilitates planning and delivery, but that could be planning and delivery of a day-to-day rather than a broad range. And quite frankly, the reason I want a CAO is so that we have somebody that's actually going to help us plan for the future, and that's the strategic sort of big picture sort of thinking that I obviously need help with on a regular basis. So. I think we want it in there only because I think that's in my mind a significant part of the work of the CEO is to help guide the future, right? I've always said if I walked into the CEO's office and he or she is sitting there with their feet up in their desk and the eyes closed, I'm going to assume that they're blue sky thinking, and that that's what I pay you for. Now, if you're sound asleep, that's a slightly different thing. But I really do think that, you know, a big part of your job should be sort of where are we going in the future, and that's not something that comes easy to people who are sitting on the outside. Like as board members, we're not immersed enough into it to be able to say this is where we need to go, so or what we need to get done.
So are you suggesting an actual change to it then to say strategic planning as opposed to planning?
I'm wondering if there should be an F on the end of it that, and it may actually should be the A, but that says, you know, helps the board with strategic planning or something along the line and all.
Thoughts on that, Lisa Marie?
So are you thinking of like an F, something around guiding the future direction of libraries, or guiding the board through planning for future direction of libraries? Something,
What about just strategic planning?
Sorry. As I say, I think it's any sort of senior position, and you know, Lynn's in the same boat. You expect, or at least I expect them to be thinking, you know, not just what are the problems of today, but what are the trends and things that are happening, whether it be in Lynn's case, you know, finance and all that sort of stuff, what's happening with interest rates, all that. In the library's case, what's new and different, and I think your predecessor tried to do that, and sometimes it's kicking and screaming to get the board to move, but that's still what I want to hear. Right? I want to hear where are we going, or how do we, you know, what are the itches that need to be scratched? What are the things that we want to move forward or need to move forward so that we're relevant and useful to the community to address the community needs of tomorrow? And that's not an easy task, but and it's well beyond my ability. But I do think it's something that I would personally be looking to the CEO to help us as a board understand that what the future is going to look like or should look like, and how would we get there. So I don't know how you want to word that. I'm not the wordsmith here. So
so could I propose for C, adding to supports and facilitates planning and delivery of services, put at the end there to kind of finish the thought and make sure that you, like, it's framed, that what that planning is. And then a FB, strategic planning and future direction. Would that capture what you're trying to achieve there? And although it's at the end, it still has it, like, instead of at A as a beginning point, I think it's still
I
holds
would,
weight.
I would put it as A only because I think it's the most important thing that
Okay.
the CEO does, quite
So we can
frankly.
rearrange those.
Well, that and sort of overseeing the day-to-day operations, so, which is support and facilitate, so.
I think it's something you told us you're doing already. I think we're going to get together with our staff, so you're doing it. I think this is really putting down in writing what, yeah. Anybody else? I have a couple, well, three. So one is, wanted to echo David's comments about changing the composition of the board from the 4 elected to only the 3. And frankly, I would agree with, in the future, reviewing that again, and ultimately, how low can we go, kind of thing, right? I mean, I think there is a limit in Libraries Act as to how low it can go. I think. No. Oh, okay. Well, I mean, I would encourage us to be, or frankly, the next board to be really open-minded about that and try to look at what would be the most functional for a board delivering governance to the library. So I think this is a good step in that direction. At the bottom of page, page 17 of 22 or page 2 of 7, disqualification, point E says otherwise forfeits his or her seat, suggesting that maybe it should say forfeits their seat. Because the next line is about commitment to equitable access, diversity, inclusiveness. So I just think instead of his or her, just change it to their.
That's quote from the Public Libraries Act.
Can we we can't?
We could unquote the whole thing so that.
No, if it's a quote from it, then we have to do it. Maybe we should, yeah. Maybe we should put together a letter from the chair and the CEO to them to say, you need to update this stuff because we're trying to be inclusive here and we can't quote the legislation and be inclusive. We shouldn't be held back by their legislation. So maybe we should put together something brief and just say, hey. And then there was a third thing. Oh, term of the office of the chair of the Oxford County Library shall be for 1 year. The chair may be reappointed. So at this point, I think the current chair has been the chair for almost, if not exactly, 2 years now, I think. It was pre-COVID. So 2 years and a bit. So the question would be then in the context of this, assuming we adopt this today, the question then would be, so what do we do given that we're past the 2 years or past the 1 year and 2 years in? Do we keep the current chair to see out the term? Do we adopt, do we have, elections for a new chair? I would suggest that would be the right thing to do because this allows for reappointment. But I think if we adopt this, it would be in the spirit of adopting it to say, let's have an election for a new chair and see what happens. It should be up to the board. Is that your general understanding if we adopt this? It will. There you go.
I believe this is for the term for 2023 that we'd be adopting it for. So we wouldn't have to take that step this year if we didn't.
Okay. Regina, were you trying to say something?
Oh, okay. Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you because I couldn't hear for a second there, but I wonder if we, to look again at the number of, sorry, I'm just trying to find the right page here. Number of council members. It's changed from 4 to 3, right?
Correct.
Yeah, and I just wonder if, if we're all in agreement that we talked about this before about cutting them back. Should we just rip the Band-Aid off and cut it down to 2 right now? Because we talked a lot about that earlier and we didn't really come to consensus because I know we were, it was more of a conversation than anything else. But just wondered the pros and cons of, if we wanted to, or would we, do people want to take it a little more slowly, go to 3 now and then 2 in a while for next term or something like that?
So I would suggest that most of the changes we talked about so far have been, relatively minor. I think even the addition of the line about strategic planning, in my view, is sort of clarity more than change. I
Right.
think if we're going to change the composition from the 3 that's recommended in here to 2, I would suggest that we have an amendment. Somebody moves an amendment to make that change. I'm not going to presuppose what everybody's going to think about that, but I think that would be an actual substantive change to the term of reference. So I think that would be the proper way to do it. So if you wanted to move that, Regina, that we change it from 3 to 2, and then you'd need a seconder, and then I'd open debate on that.
Well, I just thought from our discussions from back, well, it's back a few months ago now, that, it might not be a bad thing to open that up again while we're all together
Yep.
and kind of on the topic. So I would make that motion to change the number of council members from 3 to 2.
Can I have a seconder for that? And by the way, seconder doesn't necessarily mean you're going to vote in favor of it. All it means is you think it's worthy of discussion. Julia. Oh, sorry, Lynn.
So I think that we need to be clear in that amendment in terms of if there's an impact also then to the complement that would be represented by the citizen appointees. So are you going to go down to what, 6 members? Or are you going to stay at 7 members then and increase the number of citizen appointees?
Did you hear that, Regina?
Right, she cut out a little bit there, but I got most of it. So does it have to be the same? So if we cut down on a council member, we have to cut down on a community member, or is that just part and parcel of the decision?
No, either option is available. So if you from 3 elected councillors to 2, then you could essentially keep the same number of board members. In other words, increase the citizen appointees by 1, or you could reduce the overall composition of the board by reducing each by 1, assuming that you wanted to have an odd number of board members.
Right, right.
Just to make note too, 5 is the minimum number of board members you can have.
Oh, that's going to be my next question. I was pretty sure it was 5, but I wasn't positive.
So I guess the question would be, do you want to move? You want to move that we go from 3 elected to 2? Do you want to change? Do you want to reduce the number of citizen appointees by 1, or increase the number of citizen appointees by 1?
Well, we can't keep them the same, right? Because we have.
Well, I mean, you could. There's nothing saying that you can't have an even number, but functionally, it's probably better if we have an odd number. I mean, there's 10 members of county council, and there are 5 votes. I mean, that's just life. But I think in general, it's considered, preferred to have an odd number. But it's your motion, so it's up to you.
Well, I think at this point, it's more of a motion to kind of set some discussion about it again and kind of bring up our concerns from before than it really is a motion to specifically state numbers. But for the sake of the motion, I would say let's leave the number of citizen appointees alone until we've kind of discussed it all.
So then your motion would be to reduce the number of council appointees from 3 to 2, but would leave the number of citizen appointees at, what are we at now? So we would have 6 board
So
members.
we'd have 6. Just leave that one for now. Yeah.
Okay. So moved by Regina, seconded by Julia. So Regina, do you want to speak any more to that, having moved that?
No, not really. It's just that before, I know when we talked about it, and I want to say it might have been December or January meeting, I'm not sure. People seemed concerned about, the size of the board and that kind of thing, and just wondering about, would it work just as efficiently with fewer people on it, et cetera. So just, it's more so of, as I say, to kind of get our thoughts back on that and see if we're all still in the same. We said we just kind of let it go for now until we get a new CEO and things like that. So just an opportunity to discuss it. And then if we want to keep it status quo for a while, that's good too. But
Leah, as the seconder, did you want to speak to it?
Sure. As a citizen appointee, citizen volunteer, I like the idea of having less counselors, because we've talked about it before. You guys, you're all strong personalities, you have a lot of experience, and unless I can be as eloquent as you are sometimes, and maybe like get one or two of you on my side, I don't feel like I can bring forward a motion as effectively as you guys can. So I like the idea of having less of the elected members of council.
Anybody else want to speak?
McKay here. I would certainly support that. I think it has been reflected in previous discussion. I'm not on camera, so I won't vote, but I can voice approval.
Anyone else? Laura?
Yeah, I was just the history with recruiting citizen appointees. Like, do we have information on? Will it be difficult to fill spaces that aren't being filled by elected officials?
But I guess I'll ask Lynn to answer that in a second, but the first point is that the motion as it stands would have the same number of citizen appointees
Right,
recruited for
right.
the next term as this. But then I will
Okay.
throw it over to Lynn to respond to the history of.
Yeah, okay, so I will, yeah, I guess I'll add, I like the governance knowledge that the elected officials bring to the board. So I kind of hope that something like that is not lost. When you go down to two, then it might, if there's one's not there, then you're left with one. So I guess maybe keeping in mind the citizens who are appointed, that maybe at least one of them is bringing some governance experience with them.
Lynn, do you want to comment on that?
Thank you through the chair. Yes, historically, we have had difficulty in getting enough citizen appointees on the board. And not only that, in terms of retaining them has been an issue in the past board, but we've recognized that even more predominantly in this last term of council in all the boards. So it's just something to keep in mind. But again, we just go out and advertise for more when there's a vacancy. So as long as we can maintain that complement of 5, it should be good.
I would argue that historically, we've had trouble getting counselors to show up to library. No problem appointing them. Getting them to show up to meetings has been a bit of a challenge. And I'm not talking about this term, I'm talking about previous terms. So I actually would support the idea of 5 citizens appointees and 2 counselors. We kicked that around before. I agree. I think an odd number. The reality is that the board can do whatever it wants, but it has to get the budget passed county council to really be able to put things into action. And so I have no problem with 2 appointees. Some county councilors take it fairly seriously and show up for all the meetings, and some don't. And that's life is like that. I get that. I'm not being critical, but I would certainly support if Regina wanted to make a small amendment to her motion to say that it become 2 and 5. Right now, there's 3. 3 citizens appointees. We're moving it up to 4. I think we might move it up to 5. And to use her expression from before, let's just get the Band-Aid ripped off the wound and get on with it.
I think if I'm reading back through the terms of reference here, and under membership, it says the board shall consist of 7 persons appointed by council of the county of Oxford, of whom not more than 3 shall be members of the said council. So interpreting the motion on the floor literally, if the 3 changes to 2, that would automatically make the increase the number of citizen appointees. Notwithstanding that if somebody and that they can, but as things stand right now, that's literally what would happen. Is you're nodding, so you agree, yeah. So
Right,
if that Go ahead, Regina.
Sorry about that. I hate to interrupt. I apologize. Can't get my camera going. That's right. I was reading over that too, that it's according to, this term of reference, not necessarily the fact that with the provincial regulations, we can go down to 5. But for this one, we can have it so that we have 2 appointees and 5 citizen members and still fulfill that obligation.
Yeah.
So I would just have to amend my motion.
Nope. If you just say, leave yours at saying it goes to 2, that the terms of reference requires that the board be 7. So therefore, the remainder would, instead of being 4 citizen appointees, would be 5 citizen appointees automatically.
Okay, good.
Is that your intention? You're good with that?
Yes, yes.
Okay. David?
That would be the change of board composition would probably start at the fall, like after the next election. We're not going to,
That's the intention.
fire 2 of the county councilors, although
No, that's the intention
I
of the whole
certainly
thing.
would be prepared to.
That's the intention of the whole thing. Lisa Marie made that clear before with my question about the chair. This would be for the new term of the board. Anybody else want to speak to this before I call the vote? So, Lisa Marie or Lindsay, did you guys capture some wording for that? And could you just read it back to make sure everybody's totally clear on exactly what we're voting on here? We rambled around there, so I apologize.
So it would be a motion to amend the terms of reference that the board shall consist of 7 persons appointed by the council of the county of Oxford, of whom not more than 2 shall be members of the said council, and the remainder of whom shall be citizen appointees.
Thank you. Anything further on that before I call the vote? All those in favor?
In favor.
In favor.
Opposed? That is carried. Thank you, Regina. Anybody else on the library terms of reference? Any other? David?
Just in reading the essential competencies and qualifications, if you read down to the last bullet point, it says skilled in media relations, advocacy, fundraising, business and financial management, strategic planning, and policy development. Now, I've been on the board for almost 11 and a half years, and we haven't ever had somebody that was actually skilled in all of those things. So maybe it just should say skilled in some of the areas, such as, because well, I like to think I'm darn near perfect. I've been told that I'm not. And I struggle a little bit with, I don't know, let's say media relations, so I shouldn't be here. So I just think what we want is to be able to say to people, this is the skills we're looking for. You don't have to have them all, you just need to bring some of them. And frankly, I know it's further up in committed to the library. And not to pick on Julia, but I've known Julia long enough to know that she's a very brilliant person and all that sort of stuff. But I wouldn't say her strengths are in, advocacy, for example, or fundraising, right? So I think it's one of those things where you sort of say, no, we want people because of a wide range of skill sets. And one of them is being the mother of 2 little girls who use the library, right? And you can call that a skill set, although I prefer to think that it's maybe more of a sentence. But I think it's one of those things where we need the community here with us to provide that input. So when I read that, if you read it the way it's written, it's pretty onerous to ever find anybody, which may be the reason why we have trouble finding sometimes in the past, finding community members.
Did you want to rebut that, Julia?
No, I think there's no rebuttal. Mr. Mayberry, I think that's pretty accurate.
So you're suggesting a slight tweaking of there to say may include or, yeah.
So through you, Chair.
Yep.
Okay, I think I have it. So I'm going to read an adjustment to make sure I'm capturing what you like. Skilled in one or more of the following, and then lists them through. So that kind of says, we're looking for people who have some of these possible skills with that.
I think, you know, one of the skill sets, and it's, you know, you could argue it's not a skill set, but practical knowledge and experience of the library and the way it's working today. And I don't want to pick on anybody, but we have a board member who told us that A, he doesn't have a library card or didn't have a library card, and B, couldn't remember the last time he was in a library. And, you know, not being critical at all, it just seems to me that we probably want people that, not everybody has to be a regular library user, but we probably should have some kind of basic knowledge and a desire to gain more. So that's what I say. I think, you know, having people like Laura and Julia on the board is absolutely perfect. And that's why I'd like to have 5 of them instead of just a whole bunch of counselors.
Anybody else on this report?
Oh,
So I'm
Mark,
going to read the
just-
resolution.
Oh,
Sorry?
sorry, Marcus, just one thing. For the citizen appointees, when it comes after the election and everything, do we have to reapply? I wasn't sure how that actually worked.
Yeah, for the new term, after the municipal elections, when a new county council is sworn in, the library board will be repopulated after that.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yeah, so essentially, when the municipal election happens, this board will be essentially wiped out and then repopulated by the striking committee of county council in whatever that'll be now, because we get sworn in mid-November next time, so it'll be early December. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
good. And then we just reapply. Okay,
So essentially, yes, Regina, essentially anybody would have to reapply for the new board.
okay, great.
Okay. So then the motion that's on the floor then now is that the Oxford County Library Board adopt the terms of reference 2023 session of the board as attached to report number 2022-07 as amended. Is everybody good with that? Anybody want to speak to it further? All those in favor?
In
Opposed?
favor?
That's carried. And no unfinished business, no notices of motion, no, is there any new business inquiries or comments? We did the introduction part already. I wanted to do that at the beginning, not at the end. It felt weird to me. Any other inquiries? Lynn?
So I was just wondering, through the chair to members of the board, we didn't make mention of it on the agenda. However, after our last meeting or during our last board meeting, we were asked to defer decision or further discussion on a matter that was proposed to us from the Township of Zora with respect to the location of the Thamesford Library branch. So I'm just not sure if this was a time under unfinished business for you to provide us with an update with respect to that project, or if you'd like to defer that for another meeting.
Yeah, no, I can give you an update as to where things are right now, which is that the township has not made a final decision yet on how it's going to proceed with the new municipal office. So therefore, I can't say where the possibility of the delegation that was made before is going to go. That would be my formal answer. The township hasn't made a decision, so we can't go. Beyond that, I would suggest that council's probably going to go in a different direction now that probably would not include that, but that's not really a decision that council's made or not made yet. That's sort of my opinion on where they're going in their decision-making process. So my guess would be that that is not a thing that's going to happen, but I would encourage, and I don't know how you guys want to divide this up between you, but Lisa Marie and Lynn, to have further conversations with the local head of council and CAO. Thank you for reminding me of that, Lynn. Is there anything else under new business inquiries or comments? No closed session, no consideration of matters for closed, so motion to adjourn. Laura, and we're adjourned.
Thanks, everybody.